Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our Learn with Google webinar about why and how to use Google+. My name is Ryan Hayward, and I manage marketing for Google+ in Asia Pacific, and I'm based here in Tokyo. So I'm really excited to be talking with all of you today. All of you are some of our most important Google clients, so we want to make sure that we give you the best information that we can give you about how and why to use Google+. So a little bit of housekeeping and some of the basics. Again, you can see my info right here. If you want to follow me on Google+, you can find me at Ryan Hayward and look for my profile photo as you see right there. Some of the basic housekeeping elements for today. Chat questions to me, and then I'll answer them during Q&A. I think I'll probably do probably around 20 minutes of Q&A at the end of the session. If you have any problems with the presentation or if you can't hear properly, just refresh your browser. At the end of the survey, we'll be asking you to complete a short survey to give us feedback to help me and my teammates improve our presentations in the future. And then we'll also email a link to this recording within a week. And I'll give you some other resource links during the presentation that kind of go beyond this video. So what's today's agenda? Well, first, what I'm going to do, I think I've talked with a lot of brands, a lot of businesses across Asia Pacific and globally, and through a lot of these conversations, I've kind of come up with this agenda. First of all, I think it's really important for you to understand kind of how users and consumers actually use Google+ before you really understand how you should use it as a business. So I'm just going to walk through my own profile, some of the things I do on Google+. Then I'm going to walk through some of the basics of creating a Google+ page, and throughout this hour, I'll show you some of the best examples from Asia and globally. And then I'm going to talk about Hangouts. So I'll actually start a Hangout, and I'll show you some of the brands I've worked with, like McDonald's and Toyota, that have actually done really interesting group video Hangouts. Fourth, I'm going to talk to you about promotion, so how do you actually get followers on Google+, and I'll show you about some best practices. And then finally, we'll get into some of the basics for measurement. So along any point in this hour, if you want to connect with each other, you can use this hashtag G+Asia. You can use this hashtag on Twitter or on Google+. And then if you search for that hashtag on Google+ or on Twitter, you'll see other people that are talking about the session today. So feel free to use this hashtag to connect with each other and share your thoughts. So what I'm going to do now is I thought that it would be best for today's presentation to actually spend very little time in slides and to actually spend most of the time in the web, in the browser. So I'm going to switch over to a screen share to start my presentation today. So one second, please. So I'm getting the screen share ready right now. Okay. All right, so now I am sharing my screen. And here you see the profile for myself at plus.google.com. So I think before I dive into the user experience, it's important to understand that the way that we see Google+, it's not just about this social network experience that you're familiar with, although that's what I'll spend a lot of our time with today. If you look at what we're talking about in the press, in our earnings call, and with your account managers, Google+ is about making all of Google better through a social layer. So we've already made significant changes to YouTube, to Gmail, to search with the Search plus Your World enhancement to make everything better through a social layer. And that's really the vision for Google+. Now, of course, in order to do this, in order to add social layers to all of our services that people already use, we need to have a sort of a core social experience, a profile, a place where people consume and share content. So that's really what this experience is at plus.google.com, what that experience is. So when I log in, you have an experience that you're fairly used to. So we have this stream where people that I'm connected with through circles, and I'll talk about this circles experience in a minute, but people that I'm connected with that can share content with me. So my friend Dan reshared publicly a post from the New York Times. Guy Tom that I work with, again, reshared content, an article about Japan, for example. And you can see here that one of the core features is already being shown off. So Daniel Freeman, this post was public, so he shared that so that this post can be found anywhere on Google search. You don't really even have to be connected with Dan. This post is publicly available. But then Tom Percy, this was a limited post, so not everyone can see this. I just happened to be in one of Tom's circles. So I'll get into this a bit later, but you're already seeing some of the privacy features of Google+. So this is my stream. I can also go to my profile. So I click on that profile. And again, this is not too surprising. I have a photo, my name. I can have a scrapbook of 5 other images at the top of my profile. And then I have a content stream. So I think what's interesting, if any of you are going to my profile right now, most of this you actually can't see because one of the core features of Google Plus is sharing with the right people at the right time. So this first post about McDonald's Japan Google Plus page, I actually just shared that with a few of my coworkers this morning because I thought McDonald's is one of the brands that we work with, and there was a nice blog post about them. I don't really want to share that publicly, but I shared that with a limited circle of my coworkers. Same story with Malaysia Airlines. So you actually have to kind of go down a while in my stream to actually find something public. So this is probably the first thing that you guys would see on my profile right now. So other elements of this page, you can see the people that are in my circles and the people that have me in circles. So this is a little bit different from, say, Facebook, for example, where consumers have a friend. So you basically just have one number. It's a number of friends. This is probably more similar to what maybe you're familiar with Twitter. So in Twitter, you're following people, and you also can be followed. And as a brand, you tend to have many, many more followers than people that you're following. So similarly, I have around 700 people that have me in circles or that are actually following the content that I'm putting out versus around 400 people that I'm actually following or have in my own circles. So these are the basics of the profile. What are these circles that I've been talking about? So again, circles allow you to break people up into groups that more reflect real life. So I have about 150 people that I would consider acquaintances, 85 coworkers. I have my family in a group. I have friends from when I lived in San Francisco, friends in Tokyo where I live, my sort of general lifelong friends that I feel like I can share anything with. And these are kind of the core of my experience. So now that I've created these circles, it was pretty simple. I just kind of dragged and dropped people. So I'll take Larry Page, who's our CEO, and maybe I'll just decide to follow him, put them both into my following circle. So now when I go back to my stream and I want to share something, it's a really great day in Tokyo today. Maybe my friends in San Francisco don't care about that, so I'll just share that with my Tokyo friends, and then I'll post that. Maybe my Tokyo friends don't even really care either because they're also in Tokyo and they know it's warm today. And then if they choose to like that comment, they can +1 it. So again, this is not this is something that you're all probably pretty familiar with. So you can also see over on the left side my stream. I can choose to see all of this content at once from anybody, but I can also choose to see content specifically, say, coming from my family or my coworkers or sort of my best friends from life. I can see the content coming from them as well in different streams. So this is sort of the core experience for Google+. Now, one of the features that I'm going to show you pretty extensively that brands can use is this concept called a Hangout. So I'm going to show you how McDonald's in Japan has used Hangouts, President Obama, various other brands and personalities. But I'm actually just going to kind of demo a Hangout to start with. So I'm going to click to start a Hangout over here on the right side. And what a Hangout is a video, it's basically a group video discussion between you and up to 9 other people. And I can choose to invite any number of people that I want. So you can see my face here right now. And I might invite Bruce Song, who's sitting across from me. Bruce, is that you? That's you, right? Okay. Or just invite my Tokyo coworkers, so maybe someone will join. And then I'll click to Hangout, and then this will push a message out to Bruce and into the stream of all my friends in Tokyo. And if any of them see it and happen to decide to join, they can. So Bruce, actually, are you able to join? Do you want to join me? Okay. So we'll show you how this works. So we're just going to give Bruce on my team a second to join so you guys see what this is like. So in the meantime, while I'm waiting for Bruce, you can also see here up on the top right, you can chat within the Hangout. You can invite people if you didn't invite them before it started. You can actually share your screen. So we actually use Hangouts a lot for internal meetings. So we share slides and documents. You can actually watch a YouTube together within a Hangout. A YouTube video. You can actually now view documents. And I'm just going to go back. So I don't know if Bruce is going to join us, but anyway, this is kind of the core of the experience. And then if other people decide to join you, you'll see them pop up in the screen, and I'll show you some of the Hangouts that have happened with brands. So I'll show you the consumer experience throughout the hour, but now I'm going to show you the basics of how to create a plus page before I show you some of the best practice examples. So first of all, in order to create a plus page, you have to have a consumer profile. So you have to have a real name profile to actually be able to create one in the first place. So I've already created a page called Ryan's Comics, but first I'm going to create a new page. So I click to create a page, and I can choose to make it a local business page. I can make it for a product or brand. I can choose to have it be maybe more for a band or a TV show. Honestly, it doesn't really matter which one of these you pick. There's not a huge difference between any of them, except for the local business example. So the local business is more tailored for that kind of mom and pop shop. But I think for most of you, you'll probably pick this product and brand category. So I'm just going to make a quick example here, Ryan's Donut Shop. Obviously, you'll all have websites, but I'm not going to put one in. You can pick a category. Again, it doesn't really matter. Let's say Ryan's Donut Shop is a food and beverage company. You can choose who you want this to be tailored for. So if you have sort of a policy where you want it to show it to 18 or 21-year-old, or it's alcohol related, you're going to need to do a little bit more looking into our help center for the exact details of what this all means. But suffice to say, you can make some age-related settings. So I'll click to create my page. Now I can put a tagline in. Ryan's has the best donuts. I can upload a profile photo for the business. And then I can choose to share this as Ryan with my friends, but I'm not going to do that right now. So I'll finish. And now my page is created, so I can click and I can already start posting content as the page. So now that I've created this page, I can choose, as you see at the top, I'm actually using Google Plus as this page. So even though I'm Ryan Hayward as the consumer profile, when I'm using Ryan's Donut Shop as a page, no one's going to ever know anything about Ryan Hayward, so you're completely private in that way. So let me just go back to a page that I already created a little bit more, Ryan's Comics, where you can see my photo. I can go to the profile page. I can add photos, videos. I can add a lot more information about myself. I can add images at the top, and I can start posting a lot of content. So it's very basic to actually get started with a Google Plus page. So I think what I want to do now is actually just kind of show you some of the pages that have been built out in Asia Pacific that I think are doing a pretty good job and tell you some of the basics. So Malaysia Airlines actually launched their page just a few weeks ago. And they are going through a pretty big campaign right now where they are launching the A380. I think they're maybe the 8th or 9th airline in the world to launch the A380. So it's a very big deal for them. They launched a new livery, so it's a much more modern and clean look for the airline. And they've got a pretty nice looking G Plus page. Also going to show you McDonald's Japan. Waiting for that to load. Oh, here you go. Here's McDonald's Japan. It's got a lot of content. They've got about 20,000 followers. Also, Toyota is doing a really nice job. So Toyota has actually over 300,000 followers, which is the most. Google Plus is the place where they actually have the most followers of any social network. And Toyota does a really great job with this header image. So it's actually 5 different images, but there's a tool called G Plus Pick, and I have it loaded up somewhere. So if you go to gpluspick.com, this is a tool that allows you to do a bunch of things, but basically you can upload one image, and it will split it into 5 different square images that you can use to create this really nice panorama effect. And Toyota does a great job because they actually change this image at the top every few days, and they time it with announcements. So they actually just launched this awesome new FT86 sports car, which is the first, I believe it's the first sports car they've come out with in a while. Or so you can actually see that they post a lot of photos about it, and they get really, really high engagement. So you can see all these, like this one has 53 plus ones, a few shares. They've been posting a lot about this, and they do a really great job of timing changes of their header image at the top of the page to new announcements. Here's Barack Obama's plus page. Again, you can see that really nice panorama effect at the top. Excuse me. Now, I also wanted to show you the Toyota example because it's not just about the page itself. The page design is important. Posting content is important. But I would say to use Google+, you should really be thinking about how can you use this platform uniquely. So that Hangout example that I showed you earlier, I want to show you a few examples of brands and celebrity types using that. So the Hangout is a great way for you to actually have a sort of face-to-face conversation with customers. If you think about the way that you engage through social networks today, it's pretty much just through text and maybe through photos. But the Hangout adds a new video-based way for you to do this. So Toyota last week had the first Hangout on air for a brand in Asia Pacific. We had the chief engineer, who you can see here next to the car, the chief engineer for this new concept car called the FTBH. We had him have a conversation with users from the U.S. and Europe and around the world, basically taking questions about the new concept car's design. And this is a car that gets 125 miles to the gallon. It's not something that's going on sale yet because they've kind of launched these concept cars to show what the possibilities of technology are. And then later on, when they go into manufacturing, there'll obviously be some design differences, but they kind of wanted to show off some of the innovative aspects of the Toyota brand. So they announced this Hangout on there in advance and then hosted one last week. And they had, I think, maybe 5 or 6 participants. But then they used this new feature that we are in a test phase right now called Hangout on Air. So 9 people could join the conversation at one time with this engineer, but then an unlimited number of people could actually watch it. So imagine that you're basically, if you're one of the people that's watching the Hangout on Air, it's sort of like watching a TV show from your home, in which you're watching a few people actually have a conversation and you can watch it. So we don't want to make the Hangout feature such that 500,000 people can actually join in the conversation, because that will just lead to a cacophony and not really a good conversation. So we limit it to 9 people, but then any number of people could follow it. So a couple other examples of this Hangout. Actually, Barack Obama had a Hangout on air a few weeks ago. After every year the president makes a address to the U.S. Congress called the State of the Union Address. And so a couple days after he made that sort of landmark address, we then invited 6 other people, as you can see here at the bottom, to have a conversation with the president. And then we recorded that Hangout on air and posted it to YouTube. So this is an example of one theme that I'll hit on a few times, is the nice integration between Google Plus and YouTube. First, what the White House did was on their YouTube channel, for which they already have many followers, on the White House website, on Twitter, on blogs, on all their media channels, they promoted this opportunity to join a Hangout with the president. So what you could do was upload a video to the White House YouTube channel and ask a question. And then if you were selected, you'd be one of up to 9 people to join the Hangout, which you see happened here. So they got something like 200,000 uploads to the YouTube channel with people interested in joining the Hangout. And then these several people were chosen, and then several hundreds of thousands of people actually watched the broadcast of the Hangout. Excuse me. So if you think of the Hangout as a sort of scarce space that you can use, you could think about really interesting opportunities as a brand where you could have a contest, for example. So if you partner with celebrities or anyone interesting that someone might want to talk to, you could imagine holding a contest, whether through YouTube or through some other media, to allow a small number of people to end up being able to join this Hangout. And this is very interesting. One of the other elements of this Hangout that I want to point out is, you can't really see him, but in this bottom left corner where the sort of rainbow colors are was this guy, Steve Grove, from our own Google Plus team. And he acted as the moderator for the Hangout. So this is a really important, as a best practice for a Hangout. It's very important to have a moderator. Otherwise, you basically just have a few people sitting in a room, being unguided and not really knowing what to talk about. So Steve was responsible for kind of telling each person when to go, when to ask their question. And Steve also was responsible for holding rehearsals with each of these people before the Hangout with the president. So that's another best practice for you as a brand. If you're going to be having a conversation with a few people, you should do a test with each of them. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but we did this for Toyota. So every person that was going to join, we set aside maybe a half hour for all of them to ask them all to join, where we tested the internet connection, we tested their audio quality, we made sure there weren't any major problems. We also, tested having them actually ask their questions so that they, that they were kind of practiced so that when they actually had the time came to ask the president, they weren't, too nervous. So that's the best practice for getting ready for your Hangout. Another example of a Hangout, we actually had our first underwater Hangout a few weeks ago from, I think it was somewhere in Southeast Asia. So again, this is pretty technically complicated. We had a special crew out there doing a Hangout underwater, but just kind of an example of some pretty cool things you can do. We also, on the brand side, we had a Hangout with McDonald's in Japan in January. And McDonald's used this to actually launch a new burger for Japan called the Las Vegas Burger. Pretty interesting. And here we had sort of the moderator for the event at a studio in Tokyo. On the bottom you see students at a university. We had a hamburger blogger on the bottom right who was eating the burger and telling us how tasty it was during the Hangout. And then if I can forward this a little bit, I'm not sure if it'll load properly, but I'll try to show you this a little bit later. But actually, Ronald McDonald showed up for the Hangout. So this is an example of kind of a more produced Hangout where the conversation maybe wasn't so spontaneous, but if you think of it as kind of an interesting broadcast medium that is different from any sort of like TV that you might normally do, I think it's pretty interesting. So that's a taste of Hangouts. Now, I also want to, actually, what I might want to do is, since I've been talking about Hangouts, usually a lot of people have a lot of questions, so I might just look at the Q&A if there's any questions right now and do a Q&A if you guys have any questions about Hangouts or creating Plus pages so far. Let me do some Q&A right now. Okay, great. So I'm just going to take questions related to Hangouts and creating Plus pages, and other ones I'll get to the end. So one question was, Toyota had a tick on their account, so you guys saw a check mark next to Toyota. Let me just go back there so everyone knows what we're talking about. So we're talking about this verified name check. So this is something that I think a lot of people are confused about, and we need to do a better job communicating. In order to get this verified check mark, you need to contact your Google account manager and ask them to get your Plus page verified. And then you basically just need to email them and give them the link to your Plus page, say, this is our Plus page, this is actually the page that our brand controls. Please verify this for us. And then we will go into an internal tool and verify it for you. But you need to request that from your account manager. There's some documentation on the web about linking your website with your Plus page. So that's so that we know that, say Toyota, for example, their Plus page is linked with their website, that we know it's actually the same company. That's a different process. So doing that is great, and it has a lot of benefits. But it won't give you this verified check mark. So the only way to get that verified check mark is to email your Google account manager and request that. So let me just look back at any other questions that may have popped up. Another question about Hangouts. For Google Plus Hangouts, only 6 people can join, correct? Can more people join to just watch or listen? So I'm going to anyone that's actually in a Hangout that you can see, I'm going to refer to as a participant. So those are people that can actually talk to each other and actually can talk to the moderator, talk to the host. So there can be up to 10 people at one time. So if you have a moderator and you say you have President Barack Obama, you can then have not eight other people join together. Now, in terms of other people being able to then watch that, that's a feature called Hangouts on Air. And right now, that's only launched. It's only publicly launched in the U.S. And then for a few more weeks, we are whitelisting, which means basically allowing on a limited basis clients in Japan and Australia to be part of this. So if you want to test this out in the next couple weeks, we would be interested in having you do so. You need to contact your Google account manager. And then the same number of people can actually be participants in the Hangout, but then any number of people can actually watch the Hangout that you're having. So the Toyota example that I talked about, that was a Hangout on Air. The McDonald's example was also a Hangout on Air, and those were both based out of Japan. So it's open to clients based out of Japan and Australia. And the reason it's only those countries is that we're going through a variety of steps that we need to take in order to launch in these countries, related to legal issues around broadcasting and various other issues that you can imagine. But we're working hard to, first of all, make this available publicly so that you don't need to request whitelisting from us, and also to expand it to as many markets as possible. Oh, so everyone can see the questions. Right. Let me just take a couple other Hangout questions. When will the airtime be available? I think I answered that question about Hangouts on Air. Can you talk about equipment to use for Hangout, like a 4G phone, iPhone, or Android? So Hangouts can also be joined from a mobile phone. So you have to start a Hangout from desktop, but then people can actually be participants from a mobile phone. So you could imagine that, I don't know, like in the Malaysia Airlines, for example, they could be doing a tour of their new planes with someone actually walking through the plane with their mobile phone. And you can use that just off of any 3G, 4G connection that you might have. So you actually have to start it from desktop, but people can be participants from mobile as well. Great. Okay, so I'm going to keep going, and then I will take more Hangout and creating plus page questions at the end, because I know there'll be a lot of questions about that. So the next thing I want to talk to you about, I've talked to you about the basics of creating a plus page, how people actually experience the product as a consumer, and then some examples of Hangouts. The next thing I want to talk about is how do you actually promote your plus page and get followers. So there's a few ways you can do that. Obviously through various marketing initiatives, through promoting your Google Plus page on other social media channels. So if you have a lot of Facebook followers or Twitter followers, excuse me, you can promote your Plus page to them as well and get them to come and follow you. I want to show off some of the examples of people integrating Google Plus promotion into their web properties and marketing properties. So let me just skip around to a few tabs here. So I'm just going to kind of show you a smorgasbord so you guys get the idea. So this is Toyota's YouTube channel. So they already have 1,500 subscribers to their YouTube channel. What they've done is they've integrated follow us on Facebook and follow us on Google Plus buttons on their YouTube channel. So basically, this is not surprising, but think about all the places that you already have traffic, whether it's your your company's website, whether it's Facebook or Twitter channels you already have, or YouTube channel that you might have, or any property that you might have. Basically, get people to follow you from those channels. And if you think about it, it makes sense. And I'm going to show you another example with Malaysia Airlines. With the Toyota YouTube channel, for example, people might be interested in this particular video about the new FTBH concept car that they just put out in Geneva, but they might not be coming back to your YouTube channel on a regular basis. So if you actually want to get them to be sort of re-engaging with your content, it's a good idea to get them to follow you on Facebook or on Google Plus, because they don't have to continually come back to Toyota's YouTube channel. They can just go to their Google Plus stream or their Facebook stream and follow your content there. I also want to show you an example of Malaysia Airlines. So actually, YouTube just launched in Malaysia today. and Malaysia Airlines has a contest called the Big Flight Competition. So you can be amongst the first to fly on the new A380 with Malaysia Airlines. And similarly, they're going to have this campaign, going for several months. They'll have various touch points like a YouTube advertising. You can see this channel that they have right here for the contest. But again, same idea. People may not want to, or may not decide to keep coming back to your YouTube channel. They may not just not think about it. So getting them to follow you on a social media channel is a way to keep them engaged with your campaign through the various stages. So you can see here in this advertisement for this competition on their YouTube channel, they promote getting you to follow Malaysia Airlines on Google+. And you can see that I'm already following Malaysia Airlines. I have them as, I'm following them, and I can also add them to I have them in my brands circle. Now whenever I go into Google+ and Malaysia Airlines is putting out messaging, I will see that messaging, so I kind of keep in touch with their campaign through its whole life. Other integrations. So this is a football team called FC Barcelona, soccer if you're in the U.S. Famous football team. They integrated a Google+ badge at the bottom of the page along with their other social media channels. So this is a pretty simple integration, but you can see here if I click the G+ icon on their website, I'll be taken to FC Barcelona's Google+ page, and they have about 800,000 followers, so that's a pretty good amount. Other examples, this one's a little bit harder to see, sorry, but actually Chevrolet in Argentina took over their whole homepage to promote Google+ for a couple weeks. So you can see up at the top the Chevrolet icon, and they actually had a sort of a flash animation showing off their Google+ page and some of the basics of how it works to get a lot of followers. And you could click to actually follow them directly from their website homepage. Some other examples. I think that's it that I'll show you for the examples right now. Now, I also wanted to show you a few more Plus pages in Asia Pacific just to give you some inspiration. Here is Toyota Australia's Google Plus page. This is Cathay Pacific Airlines out of Hong Kong. Again, here's Toyota's. I'll come back to this in a minute. So that was promotion. Now what I want to finally get into before taking a lot of your questions is measurement. So before I get into some of the details here, basically what I want to let you know is that our measurement capabilities in terms of seeing demographics and all of the stats that you want to see, like a summation of the plus ones on your content, where users are coming from, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of those basics are coming soon, but aren't fully available to you yet. So there's a website that I'm going to point you to at the end, where you can go and see exactly what all the details are for measurement, and I'll also send you to a Google Plus page where you can follow us and find out when we're putting out these updates. But it's all coming soon. It'll be available in a combination of your Google Plus account, in Google Analytics, and in Google Webmaster Tools, depending on the stat that you're looking for. But I want to show you some of the things that you can do right now. And this is just to give you an idea of the vision that we have for analytics and social. So this is something that we're doing that's quite different from what you've seen before. So this feature is called Ripples. And what Ripples allows you to do is actually see who the main influencers are, the main resharers of your content. And this is something that you haven't really been able to do with social media before. So actually, let me just show you how to get here before I actually show you the Ripples. So Toyota has all these posts that they've made. And you can see that for any one of them, the number of people that have plussed one to that. And so if you're familiar with liking on Facebook, it's kind of similar. People are endorsing that. You can also see that 9 people shared this particular post. So let me go down to a post that had a lot more shares. So this particular post got shared 316 times. What I'm going to do is go up to the top right of that post, and I'm going to click this triangle icon and click View Ripples. And what I can do is actually see every single person that publicly shared this post. And so you can imagine all the implications of this. I'm sure a lot of you, or most of you, really care about who the main influencers are for your brand, who some of your biggest ambassadors are, and this actually allows you to see who they are very specifically. And I should say, I just want to say at the beginning of this, in terms of privacy, these are only people who have publicly reshared that post. So like you saw earlier when you looked at my Google Plus profile, I'm sharing a lot of content privately. You won't see that as a brand, and we think that that's important. So I'm going to zoom out, and you can see this whole web of people that have shared it. And in some of the other features, again, this is pretty early days, but you can actually watch the spread of the post over time. So let me just kind of hit the play button, and you can see from the time that the post was made how long it took for this to spread. So you see in this case, basically all of the spread that was going to happen happened within the first couple hours. And you can also see some other stats at the bottom, like what language did people share in. So you could see that the second most shared language was Chinese. So that means that someone actually took that post, decided to share it, and then wrote something in Chinese or had a Chinese user interface. You can also see statistics like the average chain length. And what that means is, given that someone publicly reshared it, how many times did it get reshared? So was there an average of maybe 10 people resharing it? In this case, it was only 2. Another interesting thing that you can see here is that what you would also be able to see, and let me go to another ripple to show this better. Let's look at, this is a different post that Toyota made. There's this guy, Khalil, down at the bottom. Or sorry, actually, woman, Khalil, at the bottom. You can see that when she reshared it, VWZ Corp actually then reshared it from Khalil. So Khalil has the biggest bubble in this map because this identifies her basically as the most influential person from this post. And so I think you can all imagine how powerful that is. If you see that Khalil is sort of a nodal point in your network, then you could actually sort of make, direct contact with her and tailor marketing activities around some of your most important influencers. And so one thing that we'll be working on, obviously that this is a little bit limited right now because you can only see it at an individual post level who the most influential people are, but it would be nice if you could see overall for Toyota or for any of your brands who the most influential resharers are, and that's something that we're looking into down the line. But you can already see some of the power of this capability. So some other measurement tools. This is not really a measurement tool, but if you want to see where you rank, I'm just showing you some third-party services. If you want to see where your Plus page ranks in terms of followers, or if you want to see where some of the global leaders are, I'd recommend going to socialstatistics.com, and you can actually see who the top people are on Google Plus. So globally, you can see that Britney Spears is number 1. Larry Page is up there with Snoop Dogg. It's very exciting. You can see who some of the top movers are, what some of the top posts are. And then actually for Plus pages, you can drill down there as well. Now, Plus pages, they don't just include brands and businesses. It includes, music groups, sports teams, games like Angry Birds. So if you want to compare yourself just with other businesses, for example, you'll have to do a little bit more dissecting. But this sort of allows you to see where you stack up. Another tool I'd recommend, again, while you're waiting for all of our own analysis tools, is called allmyplus.com. And sorry, I guess you can't see the URL here. I'll just move up my screen a little bit. allmyplus.com. You can take your profile ID. Your profile ID is, if we go back to, say, Cathay Pacific, you can highlight this number section after plus.google.com, copy that, and then drop it into this profile ID section and then hit submit. And then you can get the data like I have for Android right here. So you can see how many posts Android's made, how many plus ones, and looks like this data is not up to date since they've had more plus ones than this. How many times that their content's been reshared, and then you can get stats per post. You can also view a number of charts like activity over time, user engagement over time, what their most popular posts are, people following you, et cetera, et cetera. So again, these are through third-party services while we're working on our nice user interfaces and getting everything built perfectly. These are some of the third-party tools that you can use to measure your performance. And then actually today, this is not directly tied into Google+, but for any of you that are really analytics junkies out there, I'd recommend Googling around for an announcement we made today about being able to actually attribute dollar values to social media. So you can actually connect with a few social media services and actually look at your conversion data, which you have not been able to do before, and do this in Google Analytics. So I'm not a Google Analytics expert, but if any of you are out there that are really into the analytics space and are responsible for measuring conversions, I'd recommend going and taking a look at some of the news around Google Analytics today. So that was everything in a whirlwind. I wanted to leave about 20 minutes for Q&A at the end. And please ask me whatever questions you'd like. I'm going to switch back to the slide view and take your questions. Oh, right. Slides. 1 second. Questions. Okay. I have a question about the stats for Google Plus users. So there's a question about how many Google Plus users there are in Australia. So unfortunately, we don't have and are not able to share the country-level statistics for number of users. We have a stat of 100 million global users so far. That's up from, I think, something like 40 million in the fall, and Google Plus just launched publicly about 6 months ago. So what we are able to share is that in 6 months we have about 100 million users globally, and that's I think that's 7-day active users. We have 50 million one-day active users, and if you look at the growth versus say Facebook or Twitter, and this is, again, these are public stats that we've made, we are basically years ahead of the time it took for some of those services. So all of us would love to be able to share the number of users we have in all of these countries, but the best that we're able to give you right now is this 100 million global stat, which should give you an indication of the velocity that we have. And I will say that that Asia, the countries some of the countries in Asia like Japan, Australia, India are very important markets for us. And we're making big investments in all these markets in Asia. So I would say that you should get started. Does Google plan any further YouTube and Google Plus integration to encourage Google Plus engagement? So we're putting out, as I mentioned at the beginning, a core part of what we're doing here is trying to make all of Google better. It's not just about launching a social network. It's not just a single destination. So we are putting out enhancements to YouTube, search, to Gmail all the time. We had an announcement last week about some changes to the sign-up process for YouTube, for example. So you can actually now, as a new YouTube user, sign up as a Google Plus user and link your accounts together. So that should be an indication of where we're going. But yeah, we're definitely working on better YouTube and Google Plus integration, not only for users but also for businesses and brands. And you can see, for example, with the Hangouts on Air feature that I showed you, there's actually an option when you do a Hangout on Air to automatically record that Hangout on Air, and then you can directly connect that recorded video with your YouTube account. So imagine that, if anybody couldn't make that live broadcast or you want to show it again later, you can easily move it over to YouTube. And so we'll have a lot more in terms of integration coming later on. What are the SEO benefits of having a Google Plus account, and how can it be maximized if there are any? So generally at Google, we don't really get into SEO overall, but I will say that any content that you share publicly as a brand or as an individual can be discovered in search. So I get a lot of questions, why should we use Google Plus versus other social network services? That's definitely a benefit. So any content that you choose to share publicly will be displayed publicly. So and will be surfaced in search. So there's an example with an airline that I was working with where they had a chef that had just done a new gourmet menu for their first class and business class. And I looked up the chef's name and the airline name on Google, and they basically didn't have any content on the web about it except what they'd posted on Google Plus, and that's actually how I was able to find out to learn about it. They really didn't have any other content about it on the web, so that's an example of the SEO benefits. The URL for the panoramic image split tool, that's gpluspic.com, gpluspic.com. So you can go there and use that tool to split up your panoramic images into 5 images. I'll also say that we're working on improving the creative canvas for Plus pages. So right now you have to kind of go and do this splitting effect, but we're going to be working on better ways for you to use that space that are more visually attractive. There's a question about what's the average amount of followers for brands at the moment and levels of engagement. So that's a good question. There's a huge variance. So Toyota has over 300,000. I think most brands probably have something in the low thousands, but it really depends on what you do. So if you are properly, cross-promoting, if you have a YouTube channel that has a lot of followers and you tell people to follow Google Plus from your YouTube page, if you embed a Google Plus badge on your website, if you use it in your marketing like I showed you with Malaysia Airlines, you'll get a lot more followers. If you don't do anything and you just create a page and don't promote it at all, you won't get very many followers. And I would say that, again, I talk with a lot of brands about how should you use this vis-a-vis Facebook or Twitter where you maybe already have a lot of followers. I would say don't be obsessed about trying to get up to the same number of followers because you've been working on those follower counts for a long time, and don't let that be an impediment to using Google+. So here's an example. Google+, the Hangouts that I showed you, are a really great tool for engaging with users, for doing for maybe doing product announcements like the hamburger, for doing conversations maybe with the CEO like we've done with Burberry. If you like that tool but you're concerned about not having enough followers on Google+, that's okay. You can have the Hangout, and if you do a Hangout in Air, you can promote the link to your Facebook followers and your Twitter followers and your Google+ followers, and they can all watch it. They need to be a Google+ user in order to be a participant in the Hangout, but for the Hangout in Air feature, which will be rolling out either to your market now or in the coming months, you don't even have to be a Google+ user to watch it. So I'd say, we very much encourage you to use all of your social media tools together. Sometimes it makes sense to use Google+ for the Hangout and promote it elsewhere. Sometimes it makes sense to invest all of your energy into building up as many followers as you can on Google+. Can you implement Google Analytics into your Google+ page? So no, you can't do that right now. Go Google around for Google Analytics and Google+ in Google News today. Sorry, I just said Google a million times, but you get the point. Go have a look at what we're doing there today. So there is some integration happening, but in terms of having really deep integration right now, in terms of seeing all your follower accounts, etc., in your Google+ page, we don't have that. Will Google+ have a similar wall posting function as Facebook where people can leave messages on your wall? So we don't have a wall per se. The way for people to communicate with you as a brand or for people to communicate with each other is to basically type. I'm not going to switch back to my screen right now, but you guys could try this right now. So if you want to communicate with, say, Toyota, go to your stream and start to post something in your stream and just type in plus, the sign plus, and then start typing whatever brand name you want, like Toyota, and then that message will get sent to them. It won't show up on their wall, but they will see the message. So it's a little bit of a different concept. You actually post that from your own stream. It's not about you going to Toyota's wall to post it right now. You can comment, you can +1, you can reshare, but there's not a wall. And in terms of whether we're going to have it, I'm not really sure, and I can't really comment on that right now. Okay. Other questions? There's a question, what is Google's policy on contests to promote a Google+ page? So I can't provide really in-depth legal advice about contests, but the basics are that we don't have a contest gadget yet that that kind of has gone through all the legal hoops. So the basic rule, and again, you need to work with your own legal counsel and look into our help center on this, but you can promote contests on a Google Plus page, but the actual contest mechanism has to happen off of the Google Plus page. So in the Malaysia Airlines example that I gave, they're having a contest on YouTube right now where you can submit a video for a chance to fly on the A380. That contest happens on YouTube, which does have the proper contest mechanisms if you work with your Google account manager on getting a contest set up. But you couldn't actually, for example, something you couldn't do on your Google Plus page is say, +1 this post or follow us in order to enter into this sweepstakes. That would be a violation of our contest policies. But you can promote it, you can encourage people to join the contest, but you need that the actual submission process and the voting process needs to happen somewhere other than your Google Plus page. There's a question about will you be able to send through a deck on the Hangout? So you can go to, there's a link you can see on the slide at google.com/plus/business. You can learn about Hangouts there, and there's a whole help center with all the technical details for Hangout. What are the requirements from a bandwidth perspective? How do you start them, et cetera, et cetera. All of those details are there. And if you just do a Google search for Google Plus Hangouts, you'll find all the documentation that you need. And I would suggest that for Hangouts, just start practicing with them with your own consumer profile. So invite some of your colleagues, invite some of your friends to have a Hangout so you really get used to how to doing it. And if you decide to do it as a brand, make sure you test. So any of those brands or President Obama or anyone that's done a Hangout, we've done testing beforehand. We've actually maybe done a rehearsal with the participants beforehand just to test for any issues that you might have. Is there any plans for media advertising with audience targeting for brands in Google+? So in terms of advertising in Google+, we don't have that right now. But if you think about this, again, what I talked about earlier was we are trying to build a social layer into YouTube, into Gmail, into search, into all of Google's services that people already use. So it's not really a huge priority for us to build advertising into Google+, because we already have a myriad of advertising options in YouTube, on search, on our display advertising network. So the idea is that all of those advertising methods will get better because of Google+. So I didn't show you this, but basically you can connect your Google+ page with your AdWords account using something called social extensions. So then if someone +1s your Plus page, or if they +1 your display ad or your search ad, sorry, we're cut off. Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. We just got a message about I think our phone is going to disconnect soon. All of this advertising gets connected with your Plus page, and then users will actually see social endorsements on these ads across the web. So if I'm looking at your ad on YouTube and I'm connected with you on Google+, and you endorsed that brand, I'll actually see your endorsement in that ad. And that's true on mobile, on desktop display advertising, on okay, great, on anywhere that you have an ad. So I guess I have to end it. Okay, great. So we're going to have to end it in just a couple minutes. So I'm just going to take one more question, and then we're going to push out to a survey. Actually, okay, I'm being told that I have to go to the survey right now. Okay, great. Well, there is a question about, do I know how many brands in Australia have set up Plus pages? I'm not really counting, but what you could just do is some of your favorite brands, just go search on, if you want to search from google.com, you can search for that brand name and then Google+. That will probably get you to it. Or you can actually go to plus.google.com and search for it, and that will bring up the brands. Just look for under the Pages category. There's a question about, the question is, the usual issue with social, do you have any examples of brands in Asia that aren't as fun as Toyota or even Malaysia Airlines? Thinking finance category, for example. So yeah, actually, just coming top of the mind, I wanted to show you guys, maybe the more, quote, fun brands. But I think actually National Australia Bank, NAB, is doing some really interesting things. So you can have a go look at their page. Also Commonwealth Bank. There's actually a number of financial companies and brands from other industries that are not auto or airlines that are using it, but those are just the ones that I chose to show you today. So again, you can go to plus.google.com, and there's a search bar at the top, and you can search for those brands there, and there'll be a drop-down tab for pages, or you can just go from google.com and search there as well. There's a question about, can we have more than one admin to a company page? How do I set this up? Yes. So when we launched Plus Pages, there was only one admin and only one owner. But now you can give management rights to multiple people. And after you create your page, just go to there's like a managers tab on the left side, and you can invite other people to be managers. I think it's something. I think you can have at least 10 managers of the page. I'm not exactly sure what the number is right now, but we do have that ability now. Okay. Any other questions? There's a question about, are you allowed to incentivize following? I'm not exactly sure about all the rules, but in terms of incentivizing following, I think any of your promotions are trying to get people to follow you. So if you want to say, follow us for a chance to be invited to a hangout, or follow us to be the first to learn about this news because we're going to put you into a kind of exclusive circle, you can absolutely do that. I think there's special rules for contests which involve monetary prizes, which you have to follow. But any sort of marketing promotion, whether it's a chance to join a hangout or get sort of exclusive news first, of course you can do that to get people to follow you. There's a number of questions about SEO and display and search. I don't really have all the answers to that, and I don't think that we know all the answers because things are early on. But I would just say best practice for your Google Plus page is similar to your website. Put information in your About section of your Plus page that you think people will actually be searching for, and then post content frequently, and post content that has words in it that people might be searching for. I think that that's the best thing you can do to make sure that you're showing up, because each post that you post publicly can be an individual search result. So if you're posting often and you're posting with things that people are searching for, that can only help you in terms of showing up in search results. There was another question about GPluspic, GPluspic.com. That's where you should go for that. And I should say there's a number of tools for Google Plus. I actually don't know all of them, but if you guys search around for some of the third-party tools that will help you out, I would recommend doing a little bit of Google searching for that as well. Right. So I think I'm going to cut this off and move you guys to the survey. We'd really appreciate it if you could take the survey at the end to help us out. And I think there's probably some questions that I missed because I see a lot of them here, and I hope I answered most of them. If I didn't, feel free to actually post a question on my Google Plus page. Just you can type in from your stream. You can type in plus Ryan Hayward, the same way you would communicate with a brand, and then type your message to me, and that will actually send a notification to me, and I can respond to you directly in a private message on Google+. So I'm happy to do a follow-up conversation with you guys. Also, we'll be sending out the recorded video of this session to everyone that registered sometime in the next week. So please take a look at that. And also have a look at google.com/plus/business. There's a lot of details there. There's code for you to implement a Google Plus badge on your website. There's details on analytics, how to get started with your Plus page. You can follow the Google Plus business page as well for new product announcements. So that's really where you should go for any of the in-depth implementation details. So thank you all very much for joining, and looking forward to talking with all of you some more.